Let's talk the mandatory virus vaccine, the Supreme Court, and what that means for me and you. Thank you for tuning into Hard News TV4. I'm your host, Terri Lynn, and this is the channel where truth is like archaeology, and every day we're digging for it. Today is September 28, 2020, and I'm doing this video today because somebody sent me a link and told me that Trump's pick for the Supreme Court justice seat, Amy Coney Barrett, is pro-vaccine and is even pro-mandatory vaccinations. So that would eliminate Trump from any culpability for saying, oh, it's not going to be mandatory if his Supreme Court mandates this. Let me show you this. Okay, so we were all talking a couple of days ago about Alan Dershowitz being interviewed by Tucker Carlson and saying it is not non-constitutional. It is not against the Constitution for the state to force you to be vaccinated. You have no right not to be vaccinated. Y'all remember we talked about all this? And people were getting upset and saying you have the constitutional right to say you don't want the vaccine. Well, let me show you you don't have the right. Okay, so I'm going to show you some of these articles. So this was May 19th. Alan Dershowitz, states can absolutely mandate your vaccinations. Attorney Alan Dershowitz says the Constitution gives the state governments the power to vaccinate people in order to prevent the spread of contagious diseases. Let me put it very clear. You have no constitutional right to endanger the public and spread the disease, even if you disagree. You have no right not to be vaccinated. You have no right not to wear a mask. You have no right to open your business, he said. Now, look at this article I found from April 30th, a month after we went into lockdown. They were already letting you know they were laying the constitutional Supreme Court argument down, okay? When the Supreme Court upheld a compulsory vaccination law. Assume that a COVID-19 vaccine is invented tomorrow and soon becomes widely available. Most Americans will undoubtedly line up early for a dose, but a small number may refuse. Do state governments have the authority to compel such refusers to get vaccinated on threat of punishment? In Jacobson versus Massachusetts, a case from 1905, the U.S. Supreme Court confronted a state law that allowed local governments to require smallpox vaccinations when the local health authorities deemed them necessary. Cambridge resident Henning Jacobson balked at his city's vaccination requirement and was fined $5. He contested that penalty and took his case all the way up to the highest court in the land. What was Jacobson's legal argument? In words of the court, Jacobson insists that his liberty is invaded when the state subject him to fine or imprisonment for neglecting or refusing to submit to vaccinations, that a compulsory vaccination law is unreasonable, arbitrary, and oppressive, and therefore hostile to the inherent right of every free man to care for his own body and health in such a way that seems best to him. The Supreme Court rejected his argument 7-2. They agreed that the power of the local community to protect itself against the epidemic threatening the safety of all might be exercised in particular circumstances and in reference to particular persons in such an arbitrary, unreasonable manner, or might go so far beyond what is reasonably required for the safety of the public as to authorize or compel the courts to interfere for the protection of such persons. But this case, he concluded, did not rise to that standard. The law was ruled to be a reasonable regulation. Okay, so the Supreme Court said each state can mandate the vaccine. Okay, here's the law. Jacobson versus Massachusetts. Jacobson versus Massachusetts, 197 U.S. 11, 1905, was a United States Supreme Court case in which the court upheld the authority of states to enforce compulsory vaccination laws. The U.S. Supreme Court's decision articulated the view that individual liberty is not absolute and is subject to the police power of the state. Background: Massachusetts was one of only 11 states that had compulsory vaccination laws. Massachusetts law empowered the Board of Health of individual cities and towns to enforce mandatory fee vaccinations for adults over the age of 21 if the municipality determined it was necessary for public health or safety of the community. Adults who refused were subject to a $5 monetary fine. In 1902, faced with an outbreak of smallpox, the Board of Health of the city of Cambridge, Massachusetts, adopted a regulation ordering the vaccination or revaccination of all its inhabitants. Cambridge pastor Henning Jacobson had lived through an era of mandatory vaccinations back in his original home of Sweden. Although the efforts to eradicate smallpox were successful in Sweden, Jacobs' childhood vaccination had gone badly, leaving him with a lifelong horror of the practice. Jacobson refused vaccination, saying that he and his son had had bad reactions to earlier vaccinations as children and that Jacobson himself had caused great and extreme suffering for a long period by a disease produced by vaccination. Jacobson believed that his family may have some sort of hereditary condition that made the smallpox vaccine particularly dangerous. Because of his refusal to get vaccinated, Jacobson was prosecuted and fined $5, about $148 in 2019 dollars. Over the next 3 years, until his case reached the Supreme Court of the United States, Jacobson argued that subjecting him to fine or imprisonment for neglecting or refusing vaccination was an invasion of his liberty. The law was unreasonable, arbitrary, and oppressive, and that one should not be subjected to the law if he or she objects to vaccination, no matter the reason. Now, it set precedent. Harlan's decision supported both police power and limits on the power, and his decision would be invoked to support both in later cases. He stated his nuanced opinion on the limits of government power by saying that general terms should be so limited in their application as not to lead to injustice, oppression, or absurd consequence. But, okay, he ruled in favor of them in this case, that it was constitutional for the good of the community for people to have to be vaccinated and submit to the police power of the state. Okay? So, you don't think that they're going to say it's mandatory for the good of the world that everybody gets vaccinated? Now, the reason why I'm doing this video, somebody sent me some information that Amy Coney Barrett was pro-mandatory vaccination, and that if it got challenged again, she would still uphold this ruling. I have not been able to confirm it, but whether or not she upholds it or not, the way that the Supreme Court ruled on this in 1905, 115 years ago, it's already case law. Okay? The states have the power. So Trump does not have to federalize it. Trump doesn't have to be the bad guy and come on TV and say everybody's got to be vaccinated. Your state governors are going to do it, and the state health departments. Y'all please leave me your comments below and let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.